beginning of the kind of neoliberal assault on the population we've been through in the past generation. U.S. Steel decided to close its main steel plants in Youngstown, Ohio. It was a steel town, like other working-class towns like Detroit. It had actually been built by the working classes. It was their town. They didn't get the profit because they were tools, but they built it. They wanted to keep it. U.S. Steel wanted to sell it, to close it down, and the union offered to buy it. They had community support. They even had some support of, I think it was a Republican governor. Just let the workers buy the plant and keep running it. Well, U.S. Steel didn't want that. In fact, this is pretty consistent. I mentioned Dave Ellerman before. He's one who's written about it and worked on it. Very commonly around here, too, eastern Massachusetts, when workers decide to try to take over an enterprise which may be perfectly profitable, but not profitable enough for the multinational who runs it. Maybe they don't want to keep it in their books. When they try to buy it, which would be a good deal for the multinational, they refuse to sell it for class reasons. They have class interests. They do not want to see the spread of popular democratic organizations for perfectly obvious reasons. This just happened in, I'll come back to Youngstown in a minute, but it just happened a couple of years ago right here in Taunton. There was a small but quite successful manufacturing plant which made specialized parts for aircraft, doing pretty well, but the multinational didn't want to bother with it, so they were going to close it down. The union, UE in this case, tried to buy it. The multinationals usually refused to sell it, and there wasn't enough support, popular support, to push it through. If there had been an Occupy movement at that time, I think that's something they might have pushed through. Actually, on a much larger scale, a couple of years ago, Obama virtually nationalized the auto industry. Not entirely, but virtually. There were a couple of options. One option was to restructure it, use taxpayer funding, hand it back to the original owners, or other people just like them, maybe a different face, but bankers, CEOs, and so on, and then have it continue to do what it had been doing before, building cars. That's what they chose. There was another option. Hand it over to the workforce, have them build what's needed in the country, which is not more cars for traffic jams, but high-speed mass transportation. The United States is very backward in the world in this respect. You can take a high-speed train from Beijing to Kazakhstan, but try to take a train from Boston to New York. It's about as slow as it was 60 years ago. This is really backward. The country needs it. And the former auto industry could have been handed over to the workforce and maybe given some support, probably less than the auto industry got, to do this. But that wasn't an option. Suppose there had been a large-scale Occupy movement, significant. It was significant, but broader, expanded. Well, I think that could have been pushed through. It takes popular consciousness. Going back to Youngstown, the case went to court in 1977. The union lost, the workers lost, and the steel mills were destroyed. But they didn't give up. They didn't just say, okay, we'll starve to death or go somewhere else. They began to organize small worker-owned enterprises. And they've been spreading around the Cleveland area, and good Youngstown, good bit of northern Ohio, into other areas. So it is taking place. But it's happening elsewhere, too. In northern Mexico, there are quite successful worker-owned plants. It's not easy because, the banks don't like to give them capital, and the government doesn't like them and won't support them, again, for class reasons. But if there's sufficient popular support, these things can develop. And it's not easy. It's hard work, and the people who organize usually suffer for it. But that's typical of almost everything. The civil rights movement, practically any movement that has ever gotten anywhere, the people up front usually take it in the chin. It's hard. And people have to be willing to endure and for a longer term gain, and that's not easy. But it can happen, and it does.